so much, Sabrina, for volunteering last minute to bring this content to us. It's really exciting what is happening in Zug, and I don't know if it's strange to tell you, but part of the funding came from excess taxes that were, after there were some OECD changes in tax law, there was so much surplus tax that some of that went into this joint research initiative. And yeah, I think it's great that Canton Zug is so committed to blockchain and so excited for it. So quick breather. Does anyone want to jump around? Just want to get the energy back in the room. So we were going to have a bit more kind of presentation on the Build Week roadmap, but I think what the conversation that started this morning was really interesting around like what would make you move to Zuitzerland, what would get you excited. So I'm going to give a very quick presentation on one hypothesis or how this might evolve. This is really just thinking out loud. This isn't official by any means and may change significantly by the time it becomes reality. And then I'm going to do that very briefly, and then I would actually like to have 2 mics going around the room and just very snappy people, max 10, 20 seconds. What would get you excited? What would you like to see done in Zuitzerland? What would make you move to a hub like this? And yeah, looking forward to hear what you guys are thinking. So quick show of hands who's paying attention. Okay, quick show of hands who's super tired. Okay, I feel you. It's a long day, so I'm really excited though to hear people's input on what this could look like. So very quickly, what we've been thinking about is sort of aligned with the ideas that Vitalik was presenting around sort of a city coin and inspired by Swiss cooperatives. I've talked about this before, but very briefly, Swiss cooperatives are very interesting, especially the real estate cooperatives. They're widely used, they're well established. The largest one has over 8,000 members. Cooperatives are allowed to make a profit, but the dividends that they can issue to, like, let's say, shareholders are limited to a certain max percentage, and the reserves need to be kept for the future of the cooperative and used for the good of the members. On average, the Swiss real estate cooperatives, they're reducing rent by 25 to 30% for their residents. Another thing that's interesting about them and that I find interesting for on-chain work is that you can have shares that are owned by members or by investors. And just owning these share papers doesn't necessarily allow you to actually live in the cooperative or use the cooperative's, let's say, services. You have to be also a member of the cooperative. And so there's an interesting way there to separate between, I'm a financial investor that believes somehow in the return that this can create, and I'm a resident of this and a member of this and want to be part of it and also use my tokens to live in. But if I'm just a financial investor, I can get the financial returns, and if I'm a member of this and part of it, I can have other kinds of utility as well. So kind of the design questions are like, how might we bring Swiss real estate cooperatives into the 21st century, bring them on-chain, build a fully on-chain society? How might we build a really large pool of equity really quickly? And how might we bootstrap network effects quickly? Because these are all hard problems. Some loose hypotheses. I think one reason that people go, or a very important reason that people go to SF is because there's a lot of investors and funding there, and it's probably the best place in the world to get funded. So maybe how do we make Switzerland the best place in the world to get funded for building DAG tech? Another thing is just great talent attracts great talent. If we have great talent here, if we can pinpoint the talent that we have, bring it together, that will attract great talent too. Another thought is just that local talent is probably one of the easiest places to start without bootstrapping. They're already here, there's less cost to move them. As you could see with Sabrina's presentation, there's very interesting potential to work with local and cantonal governments on research, on bringing things into the real world, and in modeling what the future of society might look like. Then I think another thing, so just for us to figure out is like, how do we fund or subsidize some of the key talents that we want to be there to seed things, and that might initially be quite important. And then, semi-jokingly, like, if Vitalik decides to live here at least some of the time, probably others will too. And that's not necessarily limited to Vitalik. I think that applies to any of the major personalities in Web3 or in tech. If we can get some amazing people to live here, then others will come too. I briefly presented this morning, so one of the key inspirations that I see for how do we become a talent black hole is how do we become a Harvard or a Stanford, and how do we build an endowment fund that allows us to do public goods funding and consistently have that sort of sovereignty that comes from having your own source of funding. So it's very, like, at the moment, very loose, and what could this possibly look like? And so I just wanted to show you an example. There are many such examples of new build projects in Switzerland, but this particular one stood out to me because it's in the canton of Zug. It's very close to the lake. It looks beautiful, and it's also got a couple of interesting things. So it's an old paper factory that's being converted into a new real estate, commercial, residential sort of area, campus, you could say. It's in the town of Cham, which is maybe like 10 minutes bike ride from the town of Zug. And they're building this campus to have extensive work, office, and commercial space. There's like commercial space for things like childcare, but also bakeries, shops, gastronomy, all of that. And it's all going to be in one big campus. There's amazing large workspaces, small workspaces, and very like beautiful architecturally designed at the kind of place that you can imagine really wanting to live and work, or at least I can. They also already have in their plans to have this event space, which, you know, we're remembering our requirements from this morning. We really need to have an event space for these pop-up villages and for the kinds of things that we're doing here. And interestingly, they're going to have, as part of this, a kind of a hotel slash temporary accommodation. So that would kind of be one of the answers to, you know, how do we deal with both permanent residents and how do we deal with people that want to come in for a day, a week, or a month. And so that, to me, just sticks out as a really interesting example. The project's being finished next year. And so I guess one open question is, like, could we potentially move in there as temporarily leasing some of the apartments, some of the workspaces, and maybe using the hotel as like a way of bringing people in temporarily. So that's kind of just one idea of what this could look like. As you can see, like, there's going to be a bakery, they're getting the childcare, there's going to be a local creche, there's going to be loads of cafes, and so it's cool to me because it's like, it's a village, but it's not a village. It's like a commercial real estate project, but then you're going to be like integrated within a village and part of this little society in the town of Cham. And the question is, like, what would that look like if we brought that fully on chain? What would it look like if we built that in 10 years or in 5 years fully ourselves and made this like a fully on chain, fully powered by our utility tokens kind of society, and how might that actually be for us? And the reason it's exciting to me, beyond anything else, is that it's a financially viable project. So I think one of the key things here is, how do we actually get investment, and how do we get the level of investment that we need to build something of this size? And it's always good when you can start from something that's actually financially viable and then work from there. And so potentially this is the kind of model that we could look at and say, how do we build this kind of project with, say, a real estate cooperative? How do we bring all of that on-chain, and how do we maybe eventually have this kind of city token that Vitalik was touching on this morning? And so this is extremely unscientific, but one of my inspirations was also the Swiss National Bank, which is interesting in that I think it's relatively unique that in the Swiss National Bank you actually have like shareholders, so people can buy shares outside. They don't have to be like Swiss citizens or residents to buy shares in the Swiss National Bank. And so I kind of been riffing internally on, like, maybe we have this one entity, the real estate cooperative, which is democratic and oriented around the quality of life of the citizens and making this an amazing place to live. And then also have this kind of Swiss National Bank, Swiss National Bank structure, where we have the ability to take on outside investor capital and build up an endowment fund by essentially being able to sell and credibly sell that we are going to have incredible opportunities to invest in DX startups and have open source tech and to invest in, say, Zuitzerland additional nodes and like living labs, and that's going to be something that can get a very good financial return, more like venture capital, but that return also serves our citizens in that it gives an endowment fund like percentage to also the residents and citizens and back to the cooperative, and that this becomes kind of like a little ecosystem that feeds itself, grows itself, and eventually becomes as big as, say, a Harvard or a Stanford endowment fund, and that you can look at that Swiss National Bank almost as like we pay some taxes in and we bring some investors in, but in exchange we have this incredible, I don't know, 10 million or 20 or 100 million a year that we are able to provide in public goods to our ecosystem. So that's just like, in I Love Fantasyland, like where this could go. And I think there's a lot more work to be done over the coming months about how that would actually really look and how it would be made to work. So I'll stop there, actually. But this is now kind of the point where I would just move to the audience and say, like, what do you think? How do you imagine this? Yeah, this is just, again, thinking out loud. What does it look like if we have, say, a Zuitzerland municipality as our core cooperative, and then there are different nodes like World Ethical Data Foundation, you saw John before, if he builds a node here in this permanent hub that's a fully independent organization, but also interdependent and interoperable. The same, what if the Blockchain Student Association builds a Swiss privacy lab? What if Swiss economics, and to be fair, none of them have opted into this. This is purely thinking out loud. What if Swiss economics builds a crypto economics lab? How do these work together? How do they interoperate? And how do we interoperate with the rest of the ecosystem and the Zuzulu ecosystem? So yeah, I'll stop here, and I would love to hear from people. What would you like to see in a permanent node in Zuitzerland? What would get you excited to move here? Just like make it short and snappy so that we can get as many as possible, but I'm super excited to hear. So we have a couple of mics already in the crowd, so just put your hand up and we'll get to you.
I cannot wait to shred these beautiful slopes we're looking at. So can we have a winter activation?
For sure.
ASAP.
Yeah. Everyone's shy. What's wrong? You don't want to move to Switzerland?
I think it, based on the model talked before and what you're showing here, like kind of made some drafts too, they kind of look quite similar. And one thing for me is being able to be in a cooperative that invests in many different local nodes, so we can take turns on who goes where. That's kind of the thing for me.
Yeah. Totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's a great idea to have physical land where, deep in protocols, they all have these sensors, and it would be nice if they could store those sensors somewhere in some kind of a network state, and then another network state could like spread these sensors around. So if you have some kind of physical land, we can have a container with all kinds of sensors from different deep in protocols. You could even share the revenue together and earn yield for and finance Switzerland. Yeah.
Love that. Zuitzerland UBI. Sort it.
For the permanent one, I guess actually product first and then digital first. If that makes sense.
Can you elaborate a little?
So product, I mean, if one of us in here would build the next Google or something like that, this could all be easily funded.
Yeah.
And digital first, I love the idea of a physical space or multiple physical spaces, but I think digital first is still important since we're coming from the technology side to allow for the flexibility. Maybe I want to be here for half a year and in the Caribbean for half a year, and if that would be on offer, then that would be a big bonus.
So yeah, I think that's part of the transnational network of Zuzulu nodes, right? So ideally, like, we can be maybe in Zurich or Zug somewhere and like head to Crescimiento or somewhere further south in winter, or Montenegro also sounds good in months where it's cold here.
I think definitely some sort of partnership with the government to allow some of us who are non-Europeans to have special visas to be able to be here beyond the 3 months that we are usually allowed. And I know some other countries don't even get 3 months or 90 days. So having those, it's not exceptions, but like the creation of the, like a specific working visa of some kind or digital nomad visa that allows us to become as close as we can to permanent residence, because that can be an issue to people churning and not having long-term residence when we are forced to like leave for that reason.
Yeah, I totally agree. That will be very helpful. So I hope the government is listening.
Yeah, also to add on this, I think diversity would be very badly impacted if all the long-term residents are only like Swiss or like Schengen people.
Plus one on that. I just wanted to say plus one on whatever that was said.
Yeah. So like several points to the more digital nomad visas in Switzerland. I'm pretty sure there's nothing of this sort yet, and I know there's a certain amount of hesitance, but yeah, we will definitely have to start those conversations.
I can add one, inclusion, not only like for visas, but also from people like worldwide that don't have the possibility to be here.
Yeah.
That would be like great.
Yeah. Okay, I'm feeling like I need more energy. So, okay, what's going to be the worst possible version of this? Sometimes, like design thinking, if you design the worst possible version, so what's the worst possible version of this that you can think of?
Where we all live in a place, and every day for 7 hours a day we plan a conference of us talking to each other over a microphone.
That sounds a lot like the last 2 weeks, Shaka.
Maybe something where there's no diversity, only a bunch of dudes working on projects that don't necessarily that aren't aligned with the ACT projects, but end up being like corporate business stuff.
Yeah. So bankers, meme coins, and...
God, I wasn't even thinking about meme coins, but yeah, that'd be even worse, yeah.
Yeah, maybe if we just build tech for the sake of tech and are sort of believe we are long-sighted, but actually are short-sighted and don't really consider the implications on a broad scale. But we do this a lot, I think. To the previous question, I don't know if this is possible, but if we organize bottom-up, like in groups of 10 or 20, maybe we have a product we want to build, and we have a legal entity that we have together, perhaps we could employ people from outside the European Union and grant them work visas. I'm not sure if this is a viable construct, but worth exploring.
Yeah, I think we'd need some, like at the moment, as I understand it, it's pretty hard to sponsor visas, or you have to have quite a high income level to do it. So maybe like, yeah, there's possibly only ways to explore it if you work with the government and try and have the support to specifically bring people in for this purpose, yeah.
For me, it would be my girlfriend would want to be a part of it, and she wouldn't want to come. That would be a main one. And some key things that would be very clear for her on that would be if it's completely detached from the local environment, the local people here, and also job-wise. She's an architect in Melbourne. What will she do in those cases? I think those are things that would come to mind, be worst case for me.
Hands, anybody? Oh, up there. Okay, hey. Yeah, so just for the sake of the recording, so gentrification of the local community would be a bad thing. Mm. Yeah, yeah. Is like probably the failure mode of SF at the moment, or in the past, like it sort of made itself so valuable that it became not what it was that made it so amazing in the beginning. So totally agree. Yeah. Anyone else up there?
I think that one other thing we were talking during lunch was, instead of turning from the current millions of people megalopolis towards a vision of multiple hubs, going back towards that, like,
Yeah.
let's make hubs, and then suddenly we're going towards millions of people, non-walkable, terrible, like that's just replicating this current city model would be dumb.
I definitely agree multiple hubs, but I also think multiple nodes within the hubs is interesting. So I'm not sure if others were here, probably some of you were, for Juan's presentation for MakerDAO, and we was presenting the star model, and that for me was really interesting in the sense that they've moved towards having individual nodes as entrepreneurs and supporting those entrepreneurs to build the independent nodes, and then those are interoperable and interdependent nodes. And I think personally that was one hypothesis, so I was excited to see that. Would you agree, or? Yeah? Okay.
I think guidelines, I mean, I wouldn't call them rules, but that's really important. And particularly if you set up the permanent hub in Switzerland, Swiss people love rules. That's really, and if you want to live together with Swiss people, I mean, there are certain rules and you have to abide to them. So I think that's important. And I mean, Switzerland is not the first project, right, that wants to set up a co-living or whatever you want to call it. I mean, there's many cooperatives here in Switzerland. They all have rules or guidelines. There's also other projects in the past which you highlighted as well. I think that's important to have some guidelines. And I personally, I love rules, but I'm also a lawyer. So and I also like to push boundaries, so that's another thing. But yeah, but I think that's important to me, so that I know exactly, okay, these are the rules, and that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that's been part of the Zuitzerland learning so far, is we want to be open, but not so open that our brain falls out. And we need these guidelines and rules. And I think that Tomasz and Vitalik had some ideas already, like no Solana on Tuesdays, or only Fahrkaste on Wednesdays. So we've got some riffing going on there. Oh, there's one at the back, right at the back.
This is related to not gentrifying, but you don't want it to be a crypto monoculture, I think. If the industry in the area is crypto, I think it's going to be a really terrible place to live. So you need to find a way for it to have a positive effect on artists and academia and all those other things. So.
Yeah, I tend to agree, and that's what I find exciting about these new build projects that are within an existing community, that people can come in, and it's not only our community that are there. We have our boundaries and our rules and our spaces, but there are the plus ones of the people there, but there are also the local community around you. That it's not just a sort of a gated community. That would feel more natural to me, but yeah. Anyone else? Otherwise, we can finish early if the energy is low and people just want to go in. Okay. So then I think we'll finish early and let everyone go and chat, because that seems to be what they're excited about. And Victoria has a couple of logistics comments quickly for you. Thanks, everyone.